Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mladen Stojic.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Las Vegas, and welcome to the HxGN Geospatial Keynote address. It's great to be here again in Vegas after 1 year in Anaheim, and I very look forward to telling our story, and ultimately we'll be talking about escaping the flatlands. So, what are the flatlands? Imagine, if you will, if we lived in a world where all of our digital experiences were done in 2 dimensions, where everything was compressed and compartmentalized to fit on a 2D screen. In reality, we actually do. Whether it's a movie we watch on our flat panel screen, or an application we use on our mobile devices or tablets. Everything that we now consume as a digital experience is consumed on a 2D surface. And as a result, our experiences happen within the flatlands. But these days, I can say, at least for myself, that we place higher emphasis and greater value on having live experiences, whether it's going to a concert, going to a sporting event, or just having a simple chat. We prefer and automatically are drawn towards an interactive and dynamic experience. Similarly, we want our digital experiences to be dynamic and fresh, just like the real world is, where our senses are ignited and engaged, and where we are no longer consumers, but active participants in a new digital reality. To get there, we need to break free. We need to break free from the limitations that are within the flatlands, and we have to explore a new horizon. We need to discover a place of dynamic potential. And in today's keynote, I will talk about how we, within the geospatial industry, can escape the flatlands to better make sense of our dynamically changing world. I will show you several examples of how we get there, but before we start, I want to explore something I think we can all relate to. What is this? Well, this is music. Well, actually, it's a sheet of music, right? Experienced on a flat surface, experienced on a piece of paper. For most of us, to really experience music means to play it, if you're a musician, or to listen to it, or perhaps in the shower in the morning to sing to it, right? Imagine how dull our world would be if all of our experiences associated with music happened just through that medium or just through that sheet of paper. Now I want you to listen to this. Is this music? Sure it is. Even with just a few notes, something very different and very special happens, right? We have a new experience that goes beyond that sheet of music. And it's amazing how we could transform what's static, that piece of paper, into something that's alive and dynamic. Now I want you to listen to this. Is this music? Well, it's live, right? It makes a sound. But it's not music to me. It's really noise. To many of us, experiencing music means listening to something that makes sense and listening to something that we can relate to. If we now apply this analogy and this story to our industry, I could look at all the data that we have within the industry to make use of in order to extract information and to ultimately make sense of our dynamically changing world. But without form and structure, we can't get to that experience, just like we have with music. Noise is one limited experience, but doesn't fully allow us to appreciate a song as it's meant to be appreciated. But once we give form, something very, very special starts to happen. Music can be wonderful. It could make us smile. If you're a good dancer, I'm not. It could make us dance, and it could ultimately transport us to a new place, a better place. It's a perfect example of how layers, patterns, and time can all come together to form a new dynamic experience. To better understand where we're getting at and where we're trying to go, let's explore how music can escape the flatlands of a sheet of paper and take us to a dynamic place, in a dynamic place of potential that allows us to fully experience that song. It all starts with one single note. By itself, this note makes a noise, and it's okay, it sounds okay. But it's only one small element in a much, much bigger production. Thankfully, music has more than one note. By adding several notes, we start creating layers. And specifically, when you add 3 notes, you create something new, and that's called a chord. So we've moved from an individual note to a chord. And now we can begin to sequence in multiple layers. We could even take this progression a lot further. Our one chord was very nice, but when you start adding a bunch of chords, that's when it starts to get really, really interesting. We can now start to sequence in multiple layers of music over a period of time. And people talk about deep learning and pattern recognition, and we hear all the buzzwords within the AI, artificial intelligence community, and we hear a lot about pattern recognition. But you know what? You know what's very interesting? Our brains, as Ola talked about yesterday with regards to our senses, intuitively identify layers and patterns within a song. How many of you hear the pattern in this next cut? Very interesting. Now, when this starts to happen, you instinctively start to hum or you start to sing along. And that's called a melody. Your experience moves and becomes more rich because you know where the song is, but you also know where it's going, and you want more. And you kind of associate that with predictive analytics with regards to what we do in our space. Now, repeatability, like a refrain, creates patterns. But there are other patterns that can be also identified within music. I want you to now listen to this specific piece and figure out what kind of patterns you can identify. So you start hearing new instruments, right? We could certainly add new instruments to the song to complement the original notes that we started with, thereby adding new layers and also new patterns to make the song a lot more interesting. Now, what we've just done here is create a harmony. So we have melody and we have harmony, the key ingredients to any good song. Similarly, in our space, in our industry, applying analysis or analytics to multiple layers allows us to understand the Earth and all of its associated processes because they're all ultimately connected. So we have layers, we have patterns. What's next? In music, timing is everything. And time, through a sheet of music, is represented by bars, by staffs, and also by signatures, or a signature. So far, the music we've been listening to is in what's called common time, which means 4 beats per measure. But what happens when you start changing the time around with a song, either slow it down or speed it up? Well, we'll find out. We're going to change this next cut to a different timing sequence. We're going to go from 4 beats per measure to 3 beats per measure. And if you like to dance, I don't, but my wife does. She's trying to teach me how to waltz. And if you've danced the waltz, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's what it means to go to 3/4 time. Let's have a look. Now, it's quite dull, isn't it? It's not the same. So when you either slow it down or speed it up, you still have the notes, you still have the layers, but they're not orchestrated at the right time. And the music just isn't right. The experience just isn't right. So where did we start? Let's go to the beginning. We started with a sheet of paper with an idea, reflected through a sheet of paper. We've added some notes. We've added chords. We've layered in different instruments to get to a harmony. And I think we could figure out how to get our timing right. By doing all of this, we can now fully experience the song as it's meant to be experienced. Let's have a listen. Nice song, very nice song. So I'd love to keep talking about music. It's a passion I have. I used to play in a band. I used to be a lead singer in a band. But I do ultimately have to talk about geospatial because that's why you're here. We've quickly arrived at a place that's very rich and gives us a completely new experience. Okay? And just like Ola talked about last night, we are all here to work towards a better version of our world. And that starts also with ourselves. It starts with ourselves, it starts with our work, it starts with our maps, it starts within our cities, and it also builds up to our nations. That's why I think it's very important that we escape the flatlands. We want to go beyond the static experiences that we see with traditional approaches to GIS, mapping, and so forth, and we want to go beyond the flatlands so that we can ultimately deliver dynamic, actionable information that makes sense. And that's what escaping the flatlands is all about. A sheet of music is just one way to experience a song, okay? Just like a paper or a digital map is a static way to experience the Earth's geography. When we play music and ultimately get our timing right, we can create a beautiful song, as we just saw. Similarly, when applying the same concepts to the geospatial industry, we can now connect processing capabilities, analytical capabilities, to not only static content, but dynamic content, and create multi-dimensional information that provides a unique information service that ultimately allows us to escape the flatlands. Just like we heard last night, we're looking for the I within data. And that's what escaping the flatlands is all about. So we're moving away from the music idea, and now we're going to start applying the same concept to our space. In our industry, how do we begin to create that dynamic experience for our customers? How do our customers do it today? Well, first of all, it starts by recording a snapshot of reality, and that's typically done with a sensor. Something, for example, many of us can relate to in this particular picture. When we go on holiday or go somewhere, we tend to take pictures to record that moment in time, right? So typically, we capture that reality, and we ultimately want to experience it at a later time for a variety of purposes and applications. But you know what? We have a process problem. In our efforts to digitally recreate an experience, we routinely break reality apart, only to experience it in the flatlands. We have systematically isolated geographic realities into layers residing in our GIS, in our CAD, and also in our BIM databases and systems. And these layers are disconnected from reality, and also disconnected from one another. Over the last several decades, we have over-engineered our attempts to recreate a dynamic experience. We have many layers. For example, we have water layers, so we know where the water is. We have road network layers, transportation layers. We have building layers. We've even gone to 3D, right? We now, through photogrammetric techniques, have the ability to produce 3D models. We can produce 3D meshes, and we have the ability to recreate reality. But we still have a problem. Everything we've done to date has been static. And these layers are good, and they do provide the underlying digital fabric upon which we can begin to extract information, but we need to go beyond the flatlands and get to the information part. And that's what escaping the flatlands is all about. As such, I challenge you to work with us as we think outside the box. I invite you to the Great Escape so we can work together and create something new so we can go beyond where we are today. How do we know we've arrived? We have to be able to deliver multidimensional, dynamic, interactive, but most importantly, information-rich experiences. It's no longer about the data. We got to take that data, make it alive so we can extract information from it. All sounds good, right? How do we get there? Well, that's why we created the HxGN Smart Map. So it helps you get to that experience. It helps you uncover the dynamic potential of what it means to go beyond a static experience to a dynamic experience. What is a smart map? Well, first of all, it's not a map. It's a dynamic information experience delivered as a service with context. It connects to content through business workflows, communicating analytics through a user experience that is modern, but also makes sense. Now I want to show you several examples. The first area that I want to talk about is in the area of smart cities. Did you know that more than half of the world's population live in cities? And that number is increasing every year. As a result, our cities are getting bigger, and their challenges are also getting bigger. Let's take a look at some of these challenges and figure out what we can do to make these cities smarter. Let's have a look.
This is a city. And this is a city. And this is a city. This is a home in a city. This is 10,000 homes. This is what 10 million homes look like. This is what it looks like to live with 10 million people.
The flood situation has gone from bad to worse.
This is what it sounds like. This is what it smells like. This is what a city feels like.
Oh my God. Probably riding in the bike.
This is a city. And this is a city. And this is a city. These are smart cities. This is what it looks like to live with 10 million people in a smart city. This is what it sounds like. This is what it smells like. This is what a smart city feels like. This is what makes cities smart. HxGN Geospatial. Shaping smart cities. Shaping smart change.
One of the key elements of any smart city is to improve the quality of life of its citizens. So many cities have policies and practices in place that are specifically focused on the quality of life. I mean, come on, who wants to wake up to this every single morning? Okay, so this is just one example of some of the issues that a city, particularly a busy city, may experience. Noise pollution. Cities are working towards finding and understanding and modeling information so they could implement policies that will address the growing levels of noise pollution. That's important because noise pollution impacts things like zoning, economic development, and ultimately the valuation of your own property, of where you live. So they have to solve this problem. In the past, and to some extent even today, many cities are using traditional GIS techniques to model and understand the impacts of noise pollution. I want to show you an example of a typical GIS solution. In this particular case, it's in Germany, and specifically in the city of Stuttgart, where they have over 245 kilometers of city rail network that does unfortunately contribute to noise pollution. So like any GIS, what do we have? We have layers, and lots of them, unfortunately. We have land use layers, we have building layers, we have road layers, we have hydrology layers, we have rail network layers. We could bring in points of interest data with associated attribution. We have a lot of layers. We have a lot of data. We could even run this data and pipe this data through a process to calculate noise pollution, overlay some imagery so that we can give it some context. But what you see here is a very typical and standard approach to calculating noise pollution. But what's wrong? First of all, the data that was collected was probably collected 3 years ago. So immediately, the data doesn't reflect what's actually happening. Secondly, it's static. The noise pollution layer that was calculated here is based on static data, so you can't expect anything but a static result. As we think about the flatlands, we have to go beyond this idea of taking static layer data, just like we talked about in music, and go to a new place and really discover the dynamic potential of taking in new content sources, dynamic content feeds, live GPS feeds, combined with analytics, delivering a new dynamic information experience. And that's what I want to show you. So we want to focus at HxGN Live with regards to our R&D, with regards to where we build solutions and capabilities on what should be, not what could be, or not what is, but what should be and what could be. Having seen a very traditional experience in the flatlands, now let's look at what it could be and what it is when you start introducing all of these new elements into the experience so that we can ultimately calculate noise pollution. Moving beyond a flat GIS, we can take all of the layers that we have and start by building the underlying digital fabric every smart city needs, which is 3D. Why is that important in this particular case? Because the noise pollution an individual hears is also a function of what floor they live on, just like air quality is. So simply by taking a 2D footprint, I can't calculate noise pollution beyond that. When we start piping in a live GPS feed of the train and start radiating the decibels produced by each moving train, combined with the 3D data, we can actually calculate the impact of noise pollution. This is what we talk about when we talk about escaping the flatlands. Moving beyond layers, fusing all this content together with a 3D underlying footprint, and ultimately creating a new experience. Beyond that, adding cinematic and animation techniques to this live experience, we can start incorporating emissions from vehicles, because every time a train stops, the traffic starts to build up. We start adding more sensors. We can calculate, as you see here, noise pollution, air quality pollution, and trains as they move forward. And this makes sense. Looking at layers that were calculated from static data doesn't make sense. But piping in all of these new content feeds, applying some analytics, and delivering it with an experience that people understand makes sense. And that's what escaping the flatlands is all about. Now let's turn our focus to sustainability. And sustainability is very important when it comes to passing policies associated with green space, with infrastructure, with water, and so forth. Let's talk about water right now. Our world is thirsty for implementing policies associated with water management so we could better understand and protect this vital resource. Did you know that in Africa and in Asia, the urban population is expected to double from 2000 to 2030? Similarly, the average person living in a slum in Nairobi, Kenya, has to pay 5 to 7 times more for a liter of water than the average North American citizen. That's a problem. And there are 828 million people living in those slum conditions, lacking the basic services such as sanitation and water. And unfortunately, this problem is increasing every year. Our water infrastructure, which has been in place for over 100 years in certain parts of the world, is starting to deteriorate, and there are problems. Worldwide, up to 60% of the water lost is lost due to leaky pipes. And this has an impact in the tune of approximately $14 billion every year. Global water usage continues to increase at twice the rate of population growth. Just in the United States alone, an average of 700 water main breaks or leaks occur every single day. And when you start adding up the numbers, that's a lot of water lost. But this problem can be avoided. This problem could be avoided by implementing modern capabilities to understand the issue and escape the flatlands to deliver the necessary information to make informed and better decisions. Recently, we worked with our partner in Romania to build a solution to address just this problem. Working in the city of Fulșani, located in the eastern part of Romania, that city has over 1,500 kilometers of water and sewer infrastructure. And that infrastructure supports approximately 80,000 households within that city. The charter for the city is to prioritize where they spend their infrastructure budget. And that's a function of leaks, reported damages, and other ancillary information that they collect on a daily basis. Using our new platform, the Smart Map platform, we have something called Map Enterprise. And Map Enterprise was able to help them get the necessary information so they could move beyond static GIS layers and maps to this information. Map Enterprise is an enterprise cloud platform. Whenever new construction happens in a city, typically the Public Works Department has to reflect change in their systems, in their databases. So in the case of new construction, they have to extend their existing water line networks and sewer networks to new construction. So we have the necessary capabilities to support that. So we need updated data, right? We need updated content. So we've solved that. But now we have to start doing some analysis. First of all, we have to query all of the historical issues that have been reported, thereby helping us understand where the focus needs to be so that we could begin analyzing and assessing some of these damages. We can slice and dice this information and data in many ways. We could introduce various visualization capabilities and so forth, but we also have to start pulling in additional layers of information, such as smart water meters. By fusing in smart water readers and meters, we have the ability to take that dynamic data, compare it to the reported issues, and visualize the areas of focus that need to be addressed. When we pull in demographic data, we could then identify those areas that can be fixed that will have the greatest positive impact to the population living in the city. So in this particular case, we've taken the data, the network data, we've taken new construction information, we've looked at historical problems, we've taken population density information, and we've also connected in information from smart water readers. And combining all this information through analysis and visualization helps us escape the flatlands in order to better decide where to prioritize our infrastructure investments. Cities recognize that providing transparency to its citizens is very critical. And many of the issues many cities unfortunately have these days is in the areas of keeping their cities safer as a result of increasing crime. Unfortunately, many of our cities have become more dangerous, and securing a city has been and continues to be a very important part of the whole safe city infrastructure. Understanding where crime happens is the first step in helping improve safety and security, while also providing greater transparency to its citizens. By understanding crime trends and patterns, we can start taking proactive steps to reduce crime and ultimately improve safety. In New York City, there are over 34,000 police officers covering 77 different police districts. Typically, in the United States, all of these cities report their crime through files that are typically made available through the internet. They're typically spreadsheets. But looking at crime data through spreadsheets doesn't make sense. So we have a smart map that allows you to slice and dice all of this data and visualize it so you can start breaking down crime trends by beat district, by the type of crime, the day a particular crime occurred, so we can start looking at patterns, just like we did in music. By understanding these trends and patterns, a city could take proactive measures to better place officers in a certain area at a certain time in order to reduce the risk of something happening. So we've taken static data and now have the ability to visualize it and make more sense out of it. But when it gets really interesting is when you start piping in live 911 computer-aided dispatch information. Now it becomes alive. You're no longer looking at old data. You now have the ability to pipe in new content feeds so that you could properly assess a situation as it occurs, and that's smart. Let's now turn our focus to geointelligence. With the establishment of smarter cities, we can ultimately also have smarter and safer nations. And to better protect and defend our nations, the need for actionable geointelligence is critical. The key challenge for providing actionable geointelligence is to harness the power of data. Regardless of the threat, agencies and departments need to leverage the tsunami of multi-source content and multi-sensor data that's now available, so they can better quickly and efficiently analyze and assess a threat as it happens and ultimately respond. Technology is revolutionizing some of these very age-old problems and issues that agencies have encountered. But an important element of defense and national security, however, remains with people. We need to be able to provide people the necessary capabilities they need so they can leverage and pipe into these capabilities and deliver actionable intelligence. As the situation develops in a particular area, it is critical that we use all possible resources. So conducting surveillance over an area requires 24-hour access to geointelligence, regardless of weather conditions or conditions on the ground. What you're looking at here is a poppy field, specifically opium poppies. And using these, what looks like a beautiful flower, heroin can be produced, as can opioids. And unfortunately, terrorist groups abroad, including ISIS, grow poppy fields like this and produce heroin and use the revenue from the production and sale of heroin to fund terrorist activity. By cutting off these funding sources, allied forces have the ability to better combat the enemy. And to do that, you have to understand where growth is occurring and ultimately where production is occurring. Using traditional optical satellites doesn't cut it, because in many parts of the world it's cloudy. But using radar imagery, we have the ability to penetrate through clouds. And we have the ability to conduct advanced algorithms against that multi-source data in order to extract information about what? About change. By comparing before and after data, specifically radar data, and applying pattern recognition algorithms, we have the ability to not only identify where change has occurred, but also calculate the quantity of production. And through things like radar coherence change detection, we can actually track the movement of vehicles from a field to a production facility to a delivery facility. All of that is made possible through this new data source, combined with analytics, producing information that makes sense and that can be used to deliver geospatial intelligence. Providing a common operational picture is vital to the decision-making process within defense and intelligence agencies. Situational awareness is a prerequisite to understanding the potential threat and our ability to respond to that threat. The National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, or the NGA, is our nation's primary source for geospatial intelligence. As a DoD combat support agency and also a member of the intelligence community, the NGA provides GeoInt, or geointelligence, to support our national security and defense interests. The NGA rely on multi-source data to gather that intelligence, and as such, they require modern exploitation capabilities to fully harness the power of geointelligence. Using HxGN's geospatial new generation of GeoInt capability on the cloud, the NGA now has the ability to quickly conduct and assess a situation, also providing them the critical capabilities needed to create intelligence reports and deliver that information very rapidly. Let me show you an example of GeoInt on the cloud, using our solution called MapX. MapX is a GeoInt solution on the cloud. It operates within a web browser. Historically, a lot of this analysis was done on an electronic light table, or more recently, on a geospatial light table on a desktop system. Within this browser, agencies have the ability to quickly query multiple databases and pull information into a scene. And typically, in many of these reports, you want to compare before and after data. So you have to be able to pull in data sources from many places. Once pulled in, you have the ability to then register and ensure that all this data lines up. If the data isn't properly registered, you can't start running analysis against the content. So we've taken over 40 years of tradecraft and implemented it as a service on the cloud. We have over 450 geoprocessing services and capabilities that can be applied to multi-source data in order to start extracting information from those content sources. Things varying from change detection to georeferencing to orthorectification and so forth. Once you have the ability to register this data, you could then take it a step further and start creating reports. You can start annotating where changes occurred and ultimately sharing that information with others so the reports can be used in other parts of the agency or within a different department of the intelligence community. So we've gone from traditional mechanisms to exploit data, typically done through these electronic light tables, and have now moved to the cloud leveraging web technologies by connecting to multiple sources, running the analysis, creating the reports, and ultimately sharing them and making them available to others. To tell us more about the NGA and its mission, at this time, I'd like to welcome Kevin Hope to the stage, who's here to join us from the NGA. Thanks for being here.
You bet. Thanks. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mladen, and good afternoon, everyone. So, as Mladen talked about, I'm Kevin Hope, Director of NGA's Foundation GeoInt Group. So, as part of the Geospatial track this week, I'm privileged to lead a session tomorrow where I'll be talking about the particular part of NGA that I lead, which is the Foundation GeoInt mission. So that's from 12 to 1:30, so shameless plug. I hope to see many of you there to have a deep dive conversation with me about where we are, the challenges, and where we're going with respect to Foundation GeoInt. So today, I'm just going to make a few very brief comments, sort of whet your appetite a little bit, and talk a little bit more about NGA as an agency, and this thing we call geospatial intelligence, just in case some of you aren't as familiar with us as an agency or GeoInt as a discipline. So let's start the conversation around what is geospatial intelligence, or this thing we call GeoInt. At the macro level, really a highly evolved intelligence discipline concerned about three major dimensions, okay, simply stated. Where, what, why, okay? Where exactly something or an object is located with precision on the face of the earth. Okay, what those objects are and how they're defined in their characteristics. And lastly, and most importantly, why, right? So going beyond, and it's really the fusion of where and what to produce something that is beyond data, okay, beyond information, to produce intelligence that we use to support combat support agencies and the intelligence community. So when you think about NGA, a relatively young organization, historically speaking, but you think about the timeline and the context of geospatial intelligence, it's actually a long and rich history in this country in terms of where geospatial intelligence traces back to. All the way back to revolutionary times, George Washington, okay, president, statesman, most importantly to us, surveyor, mapmaker, okay, that's geospatial intelligence, okay, as far back as we can go. As you move forward into the Civil War, the early use of balloons, okay, to provide the very first examples of aerial reconnaissance, okay, geospatial intelligence. Moving forward to World War II and the advances in terms of cartography, and where we're going to support the warfighter in terms of what we did and what we do for cartographic information in that era. Moving through the Cold War, okay, where aerial imagery became the backbone of geospatial intelligence. All the way forward to the days of NEMA and NGA, where satellite data and information start to become even more important, okay? So while NGA is relatively young as an agency, the discipline of geospatial intelligence has a long history, okay? So as you're thinking about GeoInt, think about it in the context of where we've been. So how does NGA produce geospatial intelligence? Well, we use a wide variety and range of data and sources. So probably if I were to ask most of you what is NGA best known for, you'd probably say imagery, imagery exploitation, imagery intelligence, and that's incredibly important to what we do. Remotely sensed data, panchromatic, multispectral, infrared, hyperspectral imagery, all incredibly important to us, have been, will be in the future, okay? But there's a whole nother dimension to geospatial intelligence, and that's the foundation side of the context, okay? Land, sea, air, science, and research, okay, are all components of geospatial intelligence, okay? Land data, feature content, maps, charts, geospatial information, GIS data, sea and air information. NGA produces on a 28-day cycle, okay, the information that are in the cockpits of our aircraft and the bridges of our ships. We are producing and ensuring safe navigation, okay, as part of geospatial intelligence. Science, we have an incredibly important role in GPS, okay? Photography, gravity, world magnetic systems, coordinate systems, world magnetic models, all part of what we do to produce geospatial intelligence. And research. So things that are becoming more and more important as we go forward in time. Human geography, the understanding and the context of people on the earth and what they do and the motivations that move populations. Okay, geographic names, open source, maritime and land boundaries, all of that provides a rich diversity and range of sources that we use to produce geospatial intelligence. So just a couple more comments, and this is really driving me towards why I came personally to the GeoInt, to the conference this week in terms of HxGN, and have a chance to talk with all of you about geospatial intelligence and GeoInt. Because as our director likes to say, what got us here, okay, won't get us there, okay? The days where the DoD and the IC had a monopoly on the sources of information to produce geospatial intelligence, and those sources were rare, they were hard to find, okay, are over. Okay? And in fact, we find ourselves in an environment that is exactly the opposite of that. The proliferation of sources, open sources, all kinds of available sources are exploding everywhere. Just take a look and take a walk through the zone this afternoon, and you can see them everywhere. Okay? So we have to rethink what we do and how we do it in terms of the production of geospatial intelligence. Okay? So that's everything from the media to the public, the intelligence community, industry, okay? All of you. International partnerships, government, think tanks, and academia, they will all play a role in what NGA does in the future and how we move to produce geospatial intelligence. We're rethinking those roles, rethinking those relationships, and rethinking those partnerships, and we need you. So the future of NGA, okay, like I just talked about, in terms of those relationships and partnerships, we need those leap-ahead capabilities. As Mladen talked about, we need to leave the flatlands, okay? We need your energy, we need your passion, we need your ideas. Okay, we need those leap-ahead technologies that was talked about last night in the keynote address, okay? Because what got us here is not going to get us where we need to be in the future, okay? So I'd like to engage all of you and challenge all of you to work with us as we drive to the future in terms of where we're going with geospatial intelligence, NGA, and certainly in tomorrow's conversation, the Foundation GEOINT mission. So it's been a great privilege so far this week to meet many of you and have the chance to come out and have this dialogue. Look forward to more conversation tomorrow. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Mladen. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Kevin. Good job. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. So we saw earlier a reflection of a modern application on the cloud, largely operating within a 2D environment. Continuing with the thread of escaping the flatlands, I want to extend what you've just seen as a 2D solution and focus more on 3D and really, once again, playing along with the escaping flatlands concept. Let's have a look. So MapX, same solution, but what's different here is that it's now operating in a 3D environment. Why is that important? Imagine a mission. Imagine you have to chart a mission where a group of individuals need to scope out an area or go down, let's say, a mountainside. Looking at a 2D image, you can certainly map out the direction, but you're not taking height or you're not taking the actual terrain into consideration. When we go beyond just looking at 3D and having 3D sources available, we can now start applying not only measurement and positioning to a 3D environment, but we could even take it a step further and start analyzing an area in 3D. In this particular case, we're actually measuring down a slope. That's important because you want to know what that gradient is, and you want to know, can I actually get troops down there? Can I take a truck down there, and so forth? When we start applying analytics against the same content sources, we can start doing very interesting things like line of sight analysis, threat dome analysis, looking at the viewshed, and so forth. We're escaping beyond looking at things in 2D, but going to 3D, more than just visualization, but actually extracting information from that 3D data. And once again, you could certainly do it in 2D, but you're not going to get the insight and the knowledge needed in order to carry out a task or carry out a mission. So that's why 3D is important. Everything you've seen so far has been made possible through the map portfolio. And it's really through the map portfolio that our customers and our partners can design, develop, and also deliver smart maps. And it's through these smart maps that we could escape the flatlands. And once again, deliver dynamic, multi-dimensional, information-rich services and experiences. The map portfolio allows organizations and users to collect and also connect to big data. And big data can be reflected through all the layers and all the content that we have in GISs, that we have in BIM systems and in CAD systems, the repositories of imagery and elevation content that's available. That's one side of it, right? But that's still static. It does provide that underlying fabric, but it's static. Once we start piping in and connecting to live and dynamic sensors, we now go from 2D and 3D to to 40. We now start piping in dynamic content feeds that then allows us to apply analysis and software solutions against those content sources to deliver solutions that make sense, whether they be in the defense arena, the security, infrastructure like we've seen in smart city, government, and so forth. Like any decision, it starts with a choice. Where do you want to be? Where do we as an industry want to be? Are we comfortable with where we're at? Are we comfortable operating in the flatlands, or do we want a new enhanced geospatial experience? Do we want to continue operating through the systems and applications and tools that we have and use, or do we want to discover the dynamic potential of a new digital experience that allows us to envision information so we can fully appreciate and understand reality that's happening every day before our eyes as the Earth changes? Together, we will escape to a new experience where we could envision information and get greater insights through the use of advanced multi-dimensional analytics delivered through and as information services, consumed as a dynamic experience that does what? That makes sense. That will help us escape the flatlands so we can fully immerse ourselves in a digital world that really reflects reality. We've just scraped the surface with what you've seen here today, and really with what smart maps can do for you. All of you, whether you're watching here or through the internet, have many, many ideas. I'm challenging you to work with us to envision a better way of mapping and changing our world. What problem do you want to solve? And what's your vision for the solution? I invite you to embrace this new platform and really push it to its limits so we can work towards a better experience and ultimately escape the flatlands. On behalf of the entire HxGN Geospatial team, I'd like to thank you for being here today. We have all of this information and what you've seen here today in the zone in the expo area, so it's certainly welcome you there to experience it for yourself. And once again, thank you for coming here today.